Hi, everybody, and welcome to the DogCo Secrets podcast. My name is Michelle Kline. I am your host and the founder of DogCo Launch, where pet care companies come to grow and scale. I am so incredibly hype for this conversation today and to bring this to you, not just because I am interviewing a very good friend and colleague of mine, Lauren Dunkle, but also because the very specific thing that Lauren and I are going to talk about in her story is so massively important, I think, for pet care companies to see a pathway for, to believe they can achieve, and to see how to actually do it. And so, Lauren, thank you so much for being here.
Of course. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks, Michelle.
So I'd love to kick off this conversation in a very specific way. And I also want to give a disclaimer to the audience. So I'm going to ask Lauren to really do a deep dive in a specific transformation that she made in her business over the last 18 months. That has been nothing short of remarkable. And I also want to clarify, it's not the only transformation she's made in the last 18 months. She's pivoted her company into a dog walking only company. She's hit all of these incredibly important metrics in her business, but there's one specific one we are going to focus on. And my disclaimer to you is I have not asked her to talk about DogCo in any specific way other than what was authentic to her experience. And just want that stated because Lauren is a good friend of mine. We have worked together for a long time, and she is actually joining DogCo Team next year, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end of the call. And I think by the end of it, you'll understand why she is. So, or at least why I wanted her to. So, Lauren, could you give us the brief talking points of how your business got to where it is up until about 2 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Michelle said, my name is Lauren. I'm the owner of the Pet Lady Limited. We are in the western suburbs of Chicago. Highlights. So I took over the business from my aunt in 2015. I had 4 ICs at the time. When I met Michelle, it was the end of 2023. And very candidly, my business was going to end the year at a significant loss. We ended the year about $20,000 loss and ended the year with a labor cost of 78%, that's where my loss came from. Since then, like Michelle mentioned, we have transitioned to primarily dog walking only. The kitties are still there. And currently, my labor cost is sitting at between 52 and 53%, and that's with admin. So these are the main highlights. If you have seen me on office hours or have, worked with me one-on-one, you will know I'm pretty open about my numbers. So I'll be very candid on here. I came into the DogCo Mastermind with coming off of a significant loss, a 78% labor cost. And I literally looked at Michelle and I said, it's a make or break it year for me. If I can't figure it out, the Pet Lady will not be here at the end of 2024. And I'm here right now. So things went right. But specifically around labor cost, when you are looking to invest in education for yourself and your business, the best place, and I didn't know this until retrospectively, but the best place to start is find someone that knows the things that you don't know. And it was very obvious that I didn't know how to run a business. And by that, I mean on the back end number side of things. I didn't know how to look at how much I charged a client for a 30-minute dog walk and translate that into a labor cost that would keep my business from going negative at the end of the year. And through DogCo, this is true. This is where I learned those skills. Those first few months in the mastermind, when we deep dove those numbers, I was like, okay, here is my problem. And just for transparency, so everyone knows, I am in Illinois. We are a very high cost of living state. Our minimum wage is $16. It will be going up again soon. And not only do we have minimum wage, but we are required to reimburse mileage at the federal rate, which is 70 cents a mile. And then we are required to offer employee benefits that a lot of other states do not need to offer. That just adds more to our labor costs, such as 401k option, a PTO option, and those things you don't realize because they come in such little pockets, but they really add up over the course of a year, adding to the labor cost.
You said something that I want to make sure the audience understands, because you said in 2015 you had 4 ICs, but coming into 2024, you did not have a small business when you came into the mastermind. So I don't want people to hear that and think this was a small company problem. You were scaling. You had maybe 15 staff. You had converted to employees. So you were held to all of these things. And then, not to throw salt on a very, I'm sure, still sore wound, but halfway through the year, the state of Illinois raised your workman's comp minimums. They doubled it, or your workman's comp percent. If you feel stuck in your pet care business, this one is for you. I've worked with over 200 companies in the pet care industry, and this is what I can tell you. If you feel stuck in your business, if you are struggling with burnout, if your net profit is too low, if you're not growing your top line revenue, those changes will not happen by accident. My name is Michelle Kline. I am a coach consultant in the pet care space, and I help team-based companies grow and scale. We have just opened up our doors for enrollment, and we are only taking companies once a year. So if you want to work with DogCo, if you have that on your radar, January 2026 is your chance, and you need to schedule a consultation now. Go to dogcolaunch.com/mastermind to learn more. All of which you just navigated so beautifully. So it just, if anyone's listening to this and thinking like, oh, like, my business is like, I don't know, like this was not like a small ship for Lauren to pivot. This was like a robust puzzle labyrinth of a problem to tackle.
No, and you're so right. And that's correct, Michelle. When I came into the mastermind, I had a staff of 12 employees and an admin. Now, she was only giving me about 5 admin hours a week. It was very minimal, mainly because I couldn't really afford her. So definitely, this is not a small business problem at all. I do attribute some of it through making that transition from ICs to employees. But again, there was a huge gap in my knowledge. I only knew the IC model of you pay them a percentage. So guess what I did when I transitioned them to employees? They were making that percentage, but I had additional costs for each of them on top of that for employer taxes and payroll stuff and workman's comp and all these things that you don't think about. And you're like, oh yeah, of course I have to pay those things, but you don't realize what that actually does to your labor costs. And for me personally, I didn't know I was supposed to add that stuff in to how much I was paying my staff, and then weigh the total cost of the staff member, including all these things, against what I'm charging for a 30-minute dog walk, for example.
I feel like it is so recent in our industry that we've started talking about benchmarks and talking about some of these numbers and like what healthy numbers looks like, which even then I use a little bit loosely because it is, I think, dependent on what model you're choosing to run, and there are different ways we can approach it. But because I didn't have that in my company. I've shared with you, but I don't know if I've shared on the podcast. I just was like, oh, I picked an arbitrary number, and I had ICs initially, so there was a little more flexibility. And then I had a month where I did the highest amount of revenue I had ever done. At that point in time, it was $16,000 in a month. And my monthly, like when everything averaged out, I was $800 short, even without paying myself at all. I hadn't paid myself yet. And I ran my numbers, and my labor was at 89%. And I was just like, I'm out of my depth here. I don't know what to do. And that's when I got a coach, and here the cycle continues.
Yeah. And I think you brought that up with that knowledge gap. And that's what is so great about DogCo. You focus on scaling, but you do it responsibly. Like, you need to have a good base and foundation, a working knowledge of your numbers. You need to have your labor cost in line or getting in line to truly achieve scaling. Similar to you, I had no problem generating growth in my business with that high labor cost. It was a very much so. And I think a little bit of me thought there was a bit of that if we build it, they will come mentality, meaning, oh, I'll just get more clients and that will obviously make up for it. But in reality, I still have to pay people to do the work. And if they're taking 78% of that money, that's still leaving me with the same percent I had before. The amount is changing, but the percent is still there. And so shifting that mindset of, we don't necessarily need to do it all or be the people for everyone, but making sure that we are aligning ourselves with our ideal clients. We are charging enough to support what I need to pay my staff. I don't pay my staff what I want to pay them. I pay them what I need to pay them. And I want to make a little bit of clarification on that. And being in a high cost living state, we don't necessarily have the luxury of offering jobs at $3, $4 over minimum wage. We have to stick a little bit closer to minimum wage for onboarding to hit our labor goals without pricing us out of our service area. I can only truly charge so much before people are going to say, this is too much, or this is not worth it, or I can get the same thing at a lower cost. There are some fine-tuning things that need to happen being in a high cost of living state, but I was able to shave, 26% off my labor cost. That is a celebration for sure. And a lot of it was realizing that I had to, start charging more for services, because by the way, I was very much so undercharging, but also lay out a financial path for my staff. Everyone has to start it here. Okay, great. And I know I need to cap my pay. So for example, I start my staff off at $16 an hour. As a dog walker, they are capped in pay at $18. They have to be, because of the mileage I have to pay them, the benefits that I'm required to give them, which I am excited that they get those benefits, don't get me wrong, as well as keep a healthy margin. So what can I do with that $2 wiggle room to make us attractive for an employee, but then also keep them engaged throughout their journey without being like, ooh, this has to be a minimum wage job forever? Because there are some ways that we can get creative with our labor costs, how we position our staff's financial journey through our companies.
I remember that was a big light bulb moment for me in my business too, where I had to have this very stark moment with myself where I just had to come to terms with the fact that because of the business I had chosen to build, the lever of pay is the lever when it comes to retention and employee satisfaction that I was going to have the least amount of leverage with. I could either continue to fight against that reality and pretend that wasn't true, which ended me up in net negative, can't pay myself, way over leveraged, or I can accept that as a reality and find other ways, in addition to a living wage, but other ways to enhance the experience within the company while getting really protective over that margin. Because to succeed in this business financially, there are obviously a lot of markers for success, but to succeed with having a profit margin and being able to pay yourself and to have the cushion that the business needs to be healthy, you're playing defense on that labor cost all the time.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point, and I want to make this very clear to everyone as we're talking about this. So when I was running a 78% labor cost, I was also paying myself pennies. And by pennies, I mean I was paying myself below the poverty line for Illinois. I was not taking a reasonable salary for being an S Corp. And I had to have a second job because I could not support myself. But the work I did with lining out this financial journey for my staff, getting so used to looking at my numbers, whether they made me cry, whether it was a celebration, or maybe it was just like, oh, thank goodness, we are holding steady. Doing all that work, not only got my labor costs in order, we ended 2024 with a profit. That means that I was able to make up the $22,000 loss from the year before, and I paid myself, and we had a profit. Like, just by making intentional changes and really like hugging my numbers close and making decisions based off the data, which I know is something that you specifically are very into. Like, let's make the
Mm-hmm.
data force our decisions. And then coming into 2025, guess what? I was able to give myself a raise. I am now making a reasonable salary for the revenue my company does. And guess what? I am above the poverty line in Illinois, and I no longer have to work a second job. So the 18 months of intensive getting comfortable with my numbers, making decisions based off the data got me to where I am. And my team has grown. My staff retention is honestly fantastic, considering that we truly are offering a minimum wage part-time job. My staff retention is almost 20 months, which is huge. And
Mm-hmm.
my staff are engaged. They have different pathways that they can take in the company to take on more responsibility, to make a little bit more money, to get involved in different ways. So I think, to your point, there are so many things that we can do with our staff to keep them engaged. That's not just throwing more money at them.
One of the things that I think was so powerful about the way you transitioned last year, Lauren, I mean, Lauren and I worked very closely together. Like, I remember so many of these conversations live time. And I remember when you were kind of coming into awareness of a lot of the numbers, and the changes that you made over the next 18 months were methodical and they were strategic. Like, and I do want to give people kind of that reassurance. Like, Lauren didn't go in and fire 2/3 of her staff and be like, well, you make too much, I'm just going to clear house. Like, she did this in a way that really protected the company from my perspective and allowed it to still have, I hope you don't mind me sharing, like, still a stellar revenue year that year. It's not like we eased off the growth so that we could kind of restructure everything operational and like took a year only to rebuild. You still grew that year and just positioned the company so well. Like, not that there weren't things that came up. I remember a very specific 6-week window where you and I were having, honestly, like a daily conversation of like, I think your hiring profile needed to change a little bit. I just remember every month, like, it would come down 2 to 3%. You were able to find another 2 to 3%, and it just stacked on itself.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I really want to make people aware of that. I did not fire a single one of my staff members that were pulling me to that high labor cost at all. It wasn't their fault. It was my fault. And they were all doing a fantastic job. But what I
Mm-hmm.
did do is I hired more intentionally. I changed my job post. I changed my talking points. And then natural turnover from staff. I mean, we also made so many changes that first year. We went to team-based. We started focusing more on dog walking, away from pet sitting. So some of the staff weeded themselves out just
Mm-hmm.
naturally, and some that
Mm-hmm.
was natural turnover. And do I have staff that are running my 78% labor costs because they're amazing and they're still on my team? Yeah, I have 2 of them. And they are my primary staff members, and I would not
Mm-hmm.
trade them in for anything. However, the other staff member on my team, which is now we're at 19, they offset their labor cost. So yes, I
Mm-hmm.
know this person is going to cost me a lot of money, but I know these 5 people that are also working today are going to
Mm-hmm.
really pull that number down because of how
Mm-hmm.
they're positioned in their routes or their pay or whatever. So it
Mm-hmm.
is not a clean house type moment. And everything really, like you said, every month it came down slightly. This was
Mm-hmm.
not an overnight thing. This was a 18 months of working. And to be honest with you, it is still a main focus for me. Just
Mm-hmm.
because I'm now running between 52 and 53%. Thank you, Shannon. Shout out Shannon. I just met with her yesterday, my bookkeeper. So she gave me exact numbers for today. I'm running those numbers, and I still want to be better. And not that I
Mm-hmm.
want to cheat my staff or be stingy. That's not it at all. But what else can I do to increase our staff's journey and buy into the business and engagement, along with protecting the numbers? Protecting your numbers on your P&L are so crucial. so, so crucial. Because even if I have a really low month in terms of labor, I know where my high months are coming, when we get busy. And so there is a little bit of balance. It is not a perfect 52% across the board. There is variation, but holding strong in that sub 55%, that's the goal personally. That's not everyone's goal.
Yeah.
That for me
Yeah.
personally.
It's not about being stingy, it's about being protective. And the reality is, this is so much better for your staff too, because profit is what allows the business to make it through things like the pandemic. God forbid we ever have another one. But if we have an economic recession or something like that, most businesses run week to week on cash flow and week to week on profit. And when we put our business in that position, we compromise not just this asset that you have invested your entire life into, we compromise other people's jobs. And don't get me wrong, I want to make money too. And I want you to make great money as the owner, really great money. And you deserve to, because you are taking a disproportionate amount of the risk. But when I really got my mind around how protecting the profit was also for my people, that's when I really got into alignment with this concept.
Yeah, I love that because it truly is so true. If something major happens, we need to be just as supportive to our staff in those aspects as in the emotional or mental aspects of being there to support them. Absolutely.
I'm so proud of you because these changes took a lot of courage. This I want to point out to everyone. If you struggle with the mentality of I am not a numbers person, I am not a data person, Lauren has come into this conversation saying that was not a natural skill set for her. There was a big deficit in the knowledge of what the business required her to know. There are now weeks, 18 months, 2 years after working with Lauren, there are some weeks where I'm like, I am trying to keep up with what she's talking about now because she has truly dedicated herself. Lauren and I actually had a moment on a call this week where we were nerding out so hard about data, and someone in the group goes into the chat and they're like, I have literally no idea what either of you are talking about anymore. And it was a cool moment because I forget that that was not a natural disposition you came into the program with. That truly is a muscle you have built over the last 18 months, 2 years together. And that's that I think is the hugest win.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And it's kind of funny. I was always really good at math, in school. However, college really killed that dream of being good at math for me, because the second you get into logic of math, it's all over. So I kind of gave up about that about myself. And you're right. I mean, getting down and dirty with my labor cost has really influenced me starting to get down and dirty with numbers in a lot of other aspects in my business. And the conversation that Michelle is referencing that we had, I mean, I got goosebumps, and we just were like, oh, this is what we can do with the data. Then we can do this, then we can do this, and it's going to influence this decision. These are the things that are exciting for me. Michelle loves to say, let the data make the decision. And I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, woo woo. But no, this is a real thing. If you have the data that's influencing it, let's do it. For example, a great example of this is I am primarily dog walking. We are transitioning away from pet sitting. We thankfully only have a few weeks left. The end of the year is it for our dog sitting for us. Now, that was a huge core service we had, and it was scary to be like, okay, we're not going to have that service. So what I did was I looked at the numbers. Do the numbers make sense? I was about 30% pet sitting and 70% dog walking when I made the decision of we're going to do it. This is the last year. Then tying that into labor. What's so interesting is I was like, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to get more dog walking clients. And then tracking labor this year, spring break, summer vacation, holidays, Labor Day weekend. And all you're hearing are those high pet sitting times, right? Well, guess who had labor cost spikes? In my opinion, what I would call inappropriate. Me. They were over 60% for the entire staff. And I started looking at those trends. Okay, when our schedule had a lot of pets sitting on it, my labor cost is 61%. Well, for me, that's not comfortable. I still have PTSD from the 78% labor cost. And then I started comparing it to the weeks that we were dog walking. Maybe we only had a couple cats here and there. And my labor cost was sub 50%. Yeah, you're hearing this. Okay, well, what do you do with that information? Well, I look at that information as this was a great decision to drop
Mm-hmm.
pet sitting. It doesn't fit our model. It doesn't fit my numbers. And look, I have clear black and white data that tells me my pet sitting puts my labor cost too high, higher than I want it to be in the business. So maybe this core service, or a service I thought was a core service, is a good pivot moment. And it truly was. This was the best decision to start backing away from pet sitting. It has cut my labor down. Those weeks it spikes, the weeks that it's low, it averages out. Using that data to influence the decision, I mean, it just gave me the pat on the back I needed of like, hey, you made a good decision. The data is there to support it.
To the point you're making, the internal data oftentimes tells a bigger story. Every pet care business owner that I talk to knows their top line revenue. They know that number. And that, I think, is probably one of the least informative numbers as far as decision making. Not that it's irrelevant and like, listen, I'm here to grow your top line. Like, I would love for every company I work with to grow, 200K next year, year over year, if they would like to. But as far as the decisions that we make, especially operationally, I think it is the nuance of the internal data where it's like, yeah, okay, maybe the business did $2,000 more this week, but spent $1,200 more in labor. And it's like, you actually netted out less for more work, more stress, more hours for you. I think at the end of the day, is that in service of your goals? Like, I do try and be really careful with DogCo to not position it as like a dog walking evangelist, because that isn't in alignment with what every company wants to do. And it certainly is not the only thing I feel equipped to coach on. But I do think when we are looking at this data, letting it inform the decision of what makes the most sense. And then I think we incorporate our personal preference. Like, if pet sitting, it just brings you so much joy, it's very mission driven for you, it fits, there's some considerations of your service area and the staffing model, that this isn't like a quest to tell companies that doesn't make sense, but I am on a mission to tell companies the data that you need to feel like you are no longer shooting in the dark and you are actually able to make an informed decision does exist inside of your business already. We just have to go excavate it.
100%. And you're so right. Like, for me personally, the pet sitting labor didn't make sense. I have a direct competitor who does full service and they thrive doing it. It fits their model. They have a little bit of a different staffing model than I do and did. And so I made the decision that was best for me and my business. But this isn't, you're right. I'm not trying to tell people, hey, the only way to get your labor costs down is to do dog walking only, because that's not true at all. Yeah, no, that's not true. I'm just, for our specific area, for my specific business model, as well as what I wanted my business to be for me, but using data to support those decisions. So I'm not just making emotional decisions, whether they're right or wrong, and really being like, okay, this is the emotional decision I want to make. Is there data to back this up?
I love that, Lauren. And I mean, that my story very much lined up with yours. Like, it did make operationally so much more sense. And very similarly, I needed the data to tell me the decision I wanted to make was okay. I loved the way that you tackled this problem this year. I loved and do love the outcome you've seen from it. And I'm really excited for you. And this can segue into a kind of conversation on what's next for you. I'm really excited for you for next year, specifically to your business. There's some DogCo excitement as well, of what I feel like you're poised to do and just how in alignment you are with your business now, and how the numbers are set up to really support you going for growth. Because before, I feel like when you first came into the mastermind, there was this push-pull tension of like, I really want the growth, I'm pushing for the growth, but things inside of your business that were working against you that we had to figure out first.
100%. Without going too deep down the rabbit hole, I will be very candid, and I hope it's okay if I bring this up.
Yeah.
You and I had a conversation, and you mentioned to me that I was on your radar for potentially churning out of my cohort, my level one cohort.
Mm.
Hey, I didn't know that's how you felt, but also I never had the thought of churning. So when I asked you why, you said you came in with rough numbers and then you had a rough start. And by rough start, I mean, I didn't enter the mastermind and all of a sudden I scaled, I grew, I did all this. That didn't happen for me. It took solid 5 months of non-growth to see growth. I don't want people to think like, oh my gosh, this is the magic answer. Month 2, here we go. Some people, yes, they see that, but some don't. And let me tell you, when month 6 hit, I mean, you know this, we took off running and have not stopped in the last 18 months, scaling and growing. But those first 5 months, I looked at it as it'll hit. It'll eventually hit. Obviously, I don't have something set up right, client messaging right, my onboarding process right. And there is a curve for every business when they grow and scale. You know, in retrospect or hindsight, I like to think of the universe was giving me 5 months to really plan out where I needed my company to go to be financially sustainable. So in that first 5 months, I made sure my processes were in line. A lot of them came from looking at my labor cost and where I needed to be. So when that growth hit, I was prepared for it. We started with a much lower labor cost on the growth, and it has taken off from there. I mean, 18 months later, and it's crazy in a good way.
Well, and I can nuance that comment to kind of put my coaching hat on. When I work with someone and they aren't implementing, but then they aren't seeing results, I can still sleep at night. You know, it's like, I'm here, I'm showing up, I'm doing my part, I'm here to support you. But if you're not taking action, there's only so much I can do. And I have peace with that. You were showing up every week with, I did this, I tried this, I implemented what you said here. And I was like, and she's not seeing results yet. So I'm up at 2 a.m. and I'm like, how to help Lauren Dunkle, like, you know, trying to figure out like me and my computer, because that's when I can't sleep. When I'm like, they're implementing and something I'm suggesting is either not landing for the service area, we need to tweak it. And I think what you and I both saw 6 months in was that it does feel a little like woo-woo universe to me. I'm not huge into that, but it did seem like there was this journey we needed to go on to get the system set up before we could unlock that for you. And my God, I'm glad we did, because I mean, how many clients did you onboard between June and October?
Between June and October of 2024, honestly, we onboarded about 120 clients, which was huge. And not only did we onboard 120 clients, we literally doubled our dog walking clients, like doubled our templates, which is unreal. And like you said, the second the key to my success was unlocked, it was all guns blazing from there. I mean, we hit the road running, and I am very thankful that I had that time for the processes, because if I hadn't known how to work out where to start staff members, I would have seen a lot of growth. I would have been hiring it too much, and my it would have done nothing for the labor cost. So not saying everyone needs to pull back on growth while you get systems in place, but you know, I was in a hot mess and needed that time to work things out, and it hit and it hit hard.
So I'd love to segue to talk about next year for just a few minutes. You are joining the DogCo team. So Lauren is coming in to work as a success leader for new companies joining the mastermind. So she'll have a pool of companies that she's working with. If you've made it this far in the episode, I'm sure you can see why I'm personally excited that this aligns with her journey. And Lauren, I know because we've had several conversations about it, but for anybody listening, maybe somebody you're working with next year, why did this make sense for you? And what are you hoping for next year?
Yeah, so for me personally, it made sense to join the team. One, DogCo is awesome. I think you're doing good work here, and I'm on board for it. Obviously, I'm still within the DogCo world, but on the working with other DogCo members, There is such value in networking and community in this industry. And the value I took from the DogCo universe is I wouldn't be the business owner I am without the other people in the community and bouncing ideas off them, working through problems with them. And I think I'm uniquely positioned because I had some pretty large bottlenecks that I had to work through, an extremely high labor cost. I work in a very high cost of living state. There's a lot of other obstacles with being in a saturated market. And all of these things, I have done so much testing on what works and what doesn't work. And even just being able to walk through someone how to test something. I'm excited about that. And I'm really excited to get others excited about their numbers, not necessarily just around labor costs, but as Michelle mentioned, like I'm getting excited about numbers in other places of my business that who knew there's even numbers to look at in that place, and getting people more comfortable and excited about looking at those numbers and like, what can we do with it? Okay, great. I have this number. So what does that mean? What can I do with it? Can I implement something? Does this drive a decision? And I'm really excited about that. So, if anyone is nervous about their numbers, don't worry. My numbers made me cry when I first looked at them and got honest with them. But I'm excited to work with everyone on their numbers or processes, or just you want to chat about what it's like owning a business. I absolutely love it. The community has always been such a valuable asset to me. I hope that my knowledge and my support can be an asset to others.
I know it will be. I'm so excited to have you in this role. It truly will be because you do get it. You know what it's like to go through windows where it's like, this is just working, which comes with its own set of struggles because, everybody thinks fast growth is just amazing and you feel top of the world and you get in it and you're like, wow, this kind of sucks a little bit sometimes. It's just a different kind of hard when you are growing at that kind of speed. So you know what it's like to be there. But you also know what it's like to feel like you're coming in unsure, not unsure necessarily of DogCo, but like unsure of what you're looking at, unsure if you want to look at it. Some of the more like kind of emotions that come around the numbers. You know what it's like to put in months of work without seeing the returns specifically that we're looking for. We were seeing returns, but in unexpected areas. And you also know what it's like to find your people, I think, here in this space. And so I'm just so excited to get to see you facilitate that process for others.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'm so excited.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming. I will wind us up here. And thank you all for listening all the way to the end. I know I loved this conversation. I hope everybody got a lot of value. So thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.